Did USC just make it past UCLA this past Saturday? What are you guys' thoughts on the Pac-12 Championship game? USC or the Oregon Ducks? We got the man Jonathan Rifkind coming right at us, and he is going to have an interesting talk here in the next episode of Sideline Sports Podcast. Welcome to Sideline Sports Podcast. If you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast. And we're finally back with another installment of Sideline Sports Podcast. I'm the host, Alex Naveja, and if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, the source of all of your SoCal sports news. I just wanted to apologize to each and every one of you guys that were anticipating on an episode last week. I had a family emergency that I had to address to last week. Was trying to do everything I can to make it back, to give you guys some content. But you know what? We got some great content with you guys as we have our guest this week, Jonathan Rifkind, the host of Bleav in the Pac-12. Here he is, Jonathan Rifkind, and of course, he likes the Oregon Ducks. So this will be an interesting podcast. Jonathan, how you doing, my guy?
Oh, I'm doing great, Alex. You know, you say I like the Oregon Ducks. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with my alma mater because so I host the Pac-12 podcast with Ryan Leaf, of course, famed quarterback, second overall pick behind Peyton Manning back in '98. He's had a very historied life, we'll say, colorful life, we'll say. And each week on the Thursday show before the upcoming games, we always go over the lines, and he and I place our fictitious bets. We're not allowed to bet, obviously, for real because of our contract, but we'll compete with each other, and we'll say the spreads, what we think, and he's beaten me every single week because every single week I give my Oregon Ducks the benefit of the doubt. And so far, yeah, they've won enough to where Washington backing out because of coronavirus has allowed them to play in the Pac-12 Championship. But I've been taking the spreads. I've been taking Oregon over Cal and Oregon over Oregon State. They lost both those games, and it's been the reason every single week that I've been losing on the lines against Ryan Leaf. So as much as I love my team, they've actually been really screwing me this year.
Man, I know that record doesn't really speak on how well they've been playing. But you know what? Before we get to that point, Jonathan, let's talk about that Saturday night game, that USC-UCLA game, fighting for that victory bell. And you know what? Both of these quarterbacks going for 300-plus yards. I mean, I think the one wrong in both of the quarterbacks was those two picks that they both threw. And then those 3 sacks that Keaton Slovis had to endure. So what were your thoughts as far as that Saturday night game?
I thought that UCLA had a legit. I mean, they were up by 17 and going into the fourth quarter, they had a legitimate shot at winning. And I had USC winning by a field goal. I was very close to the prediction. UCLA is one bad spot away, a field goal away, and then a non-blown lead away against USC, and then also the pick six against Oregon from being 6-0 and being in the Pac-12 Championship themselves. UCLA's had a phenomenal season. Chip Kelly finally over 500. They play better than anybody in this conference up on the lines. Demetric Felton, the running back, might be the next Alvin Kamara with the way that he's so dynamic out of the backfield. And DTR was 30 for 36. Yeah, those 2 picks are tough, but you're used to him throwing picks, right? I always sort of liken him to a lower tier Jameis Winston, if you will, where he'll always make the explosive plays, but he's pretty reckless with the ball, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky to trust him. Now, he had 1 incompletion in the first half. He was near perfect. On the other side, Keaton Slovis, look, they play the air raid, right? They're meant to throw the ball 40 to 50 times a game, and so he's going to throw interceptions. I was more impressed, though, with his ability to get Tyler Vaughns and Amon-Ra St. Brown involved late in the game. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown had the late game touchdown. Tyler Vaughns had a big, a 38-yard catch to set them up for the red zone opportunity to score and eventually win the game. And with the best wide receiving tandem in the nation at Southern California, it's good that Slovis has finally found his element with them. The problem is that it took them the fourth quarter to win the football game. And this is the third time this season, Alex, that USC has needed the fourth quarter to win the football game. Now, if you remember rewinding back to the opening game of the season against Arizona State, they were down by 12 points. They needed to come back. They needed 14 points to win. They got it. Against Arizona, they should have lost against Arizona, arguably the worst team in the Pac-12. And they needed the fourth quarter to win it. Against UCLA, they were down by 18. They needed the fourth quarter to win it. So I think that for USC, they're playing as a fourth quarter team. It's worked so far because at the end of the day, it matters that you get the dub. But as you see in the eyes of the committee so far, they have been unimpressed with these wins for USC, and it hasn't done them too much being ranked 13th in the nation.
Absolutely. With them being 5-0, I mean, they started off this year being 20th in the nation, and slowly but surely they still really started to go up in the rankings. Now they're sitting number 13, but I'll just say it. A win's a win. It doesn't matter if you win by a point or 20 points. As a lot of you guys know what phrase I'm referring to. It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning. If you guys know me very well, you know I like that phrase a lot. But, at the end of the day, still, real talk, USC, you can't always depend on the fourth quarter. Like, they've been very fortunate to come back to these games. And you know what? The receiving core of USC has really been an elite receiving core with Vaughns, with St. Brown, and also, how can we forget about Drake London, the man himself, basketball and football?
Long Beach Poly graduate out near you.
There you go. Closer to me. I mean, especially being a Long Beach State alum and such. And you know what? That guy has really, really been an underrated receiver for USC. He's done a great, phenomenal job for USC, keeping them closer to the game as well. But you know what? UCLA also, I mean, they always seem to make things interesting against USC. But, history does tend to repeat itself with UCLA as far as last year coming in with a close game against USC, unfortunately blowing it in the final moments of the game. But you know what? I really do believe in the future of UCLA. They have a squad. They have a core. And I really do believe in the QB also in a DTR. I think that guy has a phenomenal future with Chip Kelly's offense. And this is not a team you're going to sleep on. I think give them another season or two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I don't want to get – we're in the middle of early signing period for recruiting right now. USC just picked up another four-star quarterback. His name is Jackson Day out of Corner Canyon High School in Utah. They obviously have Mason Miller coming in from Mater Dei, transferred from Alemany. And they lost Jake Garcia out in Georgia, who's actually probably going to commit to Miami. By the way, you heard that here, folks. Jake Garcia first. Jake Garcia will probably commit to Miami, the five-star quarterback who was originally committed to USC. But here's the thing. With the state of college football right now being what it is because of the state of the world, we don't know what next season is going to look like. We don't know if we're going to have another hybrid season. We don't know if we're going to have, remember, every single player has a year of eligibility gained. This year doesn't matter. This is a practice year for all intents and purposes. How is that going to change recruiting? How is that going to change scheming? Are there going to be coaching changes? Remember, Kevin Sumlin is out at Arizona. Is there going to be a coach? Odds are it's probably Joe Salvea at Oregon, the defensive line coach and assistant defensive coordinator, is going to take that job. Is that going to change the course of some of these teams? What's going to happen with Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator at USC? Is he going to pick up and go to Illinois? Or is he going to, get a coordinating job at Auburn? We don't know. So there's a lot of these little nuances that could change the landscape based on what we see right now for the future. Now, with that being said, I completely agree with you. I think that with the class that UCLA is coming in, they have Chase Griffin, who was proved, minus that pick six at the end of the first half against Oregon, that he's a phenomenal quarterback, and I think he fits that Chip Kelly scheme very well. UCLA has some guys, and they have Parker McQuarrie, a four-star quarterback commit out of New Hampshire coming in. They have a couple of good running back commits. They just flipped the defensive back from Oregon and another defensive back from I think he was committed to Florida. So, and they just picked up a middle linebacker from Akron, Ohio, a four-star. So UCLA has the pieces, and they're gaining the credibility. This is the first season at UCLA under Chip Kelly that he's finished above 500. And that is saying something given the circumstances, given the talent. I mean, look at the South. The South is now actually more competitive than the North, and nobody predicted that, right? Colorado is a phenomenal team with Carl Durrell and Darren Shiverini have going on there is fantastic. Nobody knew about Sam Norvell or Jack Broussard before the season started. And all of a sudden, these guys have emerged as some of the most offensive powerhouse elites in the nation, right? Utah, losing their starting quarterback first game of the season. 7 freshman defenders starting this year after losing most of their defense. And guess what? They blew Colorado out last week, even though Colorado is one of the best offensive teams in the nation, as I just said, right? Arizona State has a bunch of young talent. USC is what USC is. Now they're probably going to lose Tyler Vaughns, but Amon-Ra St. Brown will come back. Keaton Slovis, obviously. Everybody gains their year of eligibility if they want it. So they're going to be pretty similar, even if Graham Harrell isn't the coach there anymore. So the South is really, really competitive. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see where UCLA fits into that mold. But right now, they're carving themselves out to be one of the better teams down there.
Well said, Jonathan. Very well said. I think you just said it right. With Colorado, I mean, USC, that would have been a fun game to watch. USC against Colorado, there would have been a big question mark as to would USC be 5-0 right now? Would they be 13th in the nation playing against Colorado? I mean, it came down to the final game, whether was it going to be Colorado at the top or was it going to be USC? But because of, Utah, you can never play or never sleep on the Utes. They always seem to find their way, and they're always a talented team that you can't sleep on at all. But with that win for the Utes, came up huge for USC for them to take the Pac-12 South. And then now, you know what, Jonathan? Let's take a quick break because you know where I'm going here in the second half. Because when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about that Pac-12 Championship Game, the Oregon Ducks against USC. We'll be right back.
This is Hector Aguayo, the long snapper for the Santa Ana Dons, and you're watching Sideline Sports Podcast.
And welcome back to the second half of Sideline Sports Podcast. Again, I'm the host, Alex Naveja, where if you're not on the sideline, it's not Sideline Sports Podcast, a source of all of your SoCal sports news. And again, with me today is the host in Bleav in the Pac-12 podcast, Jonathan Rifkind. First half, we were talking about that USC-UCLA matchup this past Saturday and how close it was and how fun it was to watch that one. I'll tell you one thing, Jonathan, I was jumping all over the place when I was watching that game, just upset with some of the USC mistakes that they were making, but at the same time, UCLA with that defense and just they had their way in the first half and the first 3 quarters. And now they have to play against an Oregon Ducks team. But originally, USC was going to play against Washington, but due to some COVID-19 issues, now they're going to play against the 2 seed against the Oregon Ducks. And now I know Jonathan has a lot to say about this matchup. So, Jonathan, I'll give you the floor. What do you have to say about this matchup?
Oh, man. I don't even – this is great prep because I'm recording my podcast with Ryan tomorrow. And I haven't really given it much thought. I mean, I have plenty of theories and opinions that I'm happy and very excited to share here. But this will be good prep for me for tomorrow to siphon all that out. Here's the deal. USC is the most talented team in the conference. We know that. Oregon has the better individual talent. The reason that USC is a better football team is because it's a team sport. You can have as much individual talent as you want, but if you don't know how to put it together, if you don't know how to bring it all onto the field cohesively, then you're probably not going to win football games, or you're going to win in unconvincing fashion. And we saw that with Oregon, right? Oregon came into the year as the favorite to win the Pac-12. This is the Pac-12 championship that we all predicted. Everybody said USC Oregon. I said USC Oregon. If you didn't say USC Oregon, I don't know what you were expecting because that was very much look, Washington was 1-1. If Oregon played Washington, Oregon probably would have won that game. I'm trying to put my bias aside here, but I truly Bleav that. With that being said, Oregon is not very good at stopping the run. That has been their Achilles heel this entire season, and it's due to 2 things. It's due, number one, to the fact that they anticipate they're better in the secondary, right? Yeah, they had their All-American, their All-American defensive backs opt out of the season, and Brady Breeze and what's his name? Wow, it's been so long and there's been so many people. He goes by Hollywood Vaughn. Anyways, Thomas Graham. They both opted out. It didn't matter though because USC has been really good at locking down number 1 and number 2 receivers for the teams that they've been playing. Now, had they played anybody as competitive as USC on in terms of skill positions, no. There's nobody out there in the nation that is as skillful as the tandem of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Tyler Vaughn. So that has opened up the game for Drake London, right? Because every team is so worried about the dynamic playability of both these receivers. Drake London has emerged as really one of the leading receiver, one of the top targets on this team, because the onus is taken off of him while secondaries are doubling up Vaughn's and trying to zone read Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Oregon it's going to be interesting. Oregon plays a lot of nickel defense, which is pass-heavy defense. Last week, we saw UCLA play cover 2 nickel defense. And if you listened to Greg McElroy, the color analyst on the call with Dave Pasch, they did a great job. I had Greg McElroy on my show a couple weeks ago. He pointed out that UCLA consistently had 2 defensive backs in the secondary because they're anticipating the pass, which is what you do against the air raid. Now, USC, they did something different than that we've seen up to that point of the season. They ran the football. We saw Veve Malpea with 18 carries. He had 14 carries coming into the game. He had 18 for a $130 or so and 2 touchdowns, or a $120. They ran the football to compensate because UCLA did everything they were supposed to do defensively to stop the air raid. They didn't account for the fact that Graham Harrell decided to not really run the air raid and actually run the football like a normal football team is supposed to do. It's going to be the same story against Oregon. Oregon up on the lines has not been very good. They probably have 4 NFL talented caliber players right now up on the front. Kayvon Thibodeau looks out of shape, and he's gassed by halftime. Second half, he just looks a little bit slow. And remember, there has not been ample conditioning this season. Everybody has to wait up until they're all cleared because contact is limited, full practices are limited. So you're not supposed to be in the best shape of your life right now because the circumstances don't allow that. So I understand why we're seeing that, the slow sluggishness, the lethargis that we're seeing from some of these players. But they're also Kayvon Thibodeau was the number 1 recruit in the nation when he was stolen from Alabama to Oregon, right? So is there really an excuse for him to be out of shape? Probably not. Like, I can excuse it, but I don't think that it should be an excuse. With that being said, USC is going to have to throw the football. They're just going to have to, because Oregon is going to throw the football, and Oregon is going to be successful. What Tyler Shuck has been doing this season, running the RPO, has been very good. He's been getting Devin Williams, USC transfer, involved more. That guy is a beast. USC made a big mistake letting him walk, because when they lose Tyler Vaughn this year or next year, who's going to replace him? Now, USC is very good at recruiting skill position players and developing them, but this guy is amazing. I mean, he's probably going to be a second-round pick when it's all said and done if Oregon uses him correctly, which they are. So and USC defensively isn't very good this season, especially stopping the pass. So it's going to be a high-octane offense against a high-octane offense. The team that scores consistently, stops are going to be few and far between. The over-under is 62.5 points, Alex. That's a big number. They're talking about 63 points. You're talking about 33 to 33 right now. That's pretty good for 2 teams who are supposed to be some of the best defenses in the nation. They're not. So we're looking at a big offensive game. USC is projected to win by 3. I know I keep going on about this because there's a lot to get to. But I think that's fair. I think USC, it pains me to say this, I think USC is going to pull it out late. I think they're going to have some fourth quarter magic again. I think that they'll probably win. And I'd rather be wrong in this situation than look dumb voting for my team just because they're my team. And realistically, USC is a more dynamic offense because they have individual talent that they brought together to be cohesive. Oregon has phenomenal talent, but they all play as individuals. They don't play as a team, and that's been their Achilles heel this season. So I think that USC is probably going to edge them out something like 38-35, take the over, push on the spread. But I also could see USC running out of gas because fourth quarter comebacks consistently take a lot out of you, and eventually you're going to falter. So if they rely on – and they're not relying on it. It's just the situation that they put themselves in. If they end up going down early, I think I'll feel more confident about Oregon pulling it out in the fourth quarter, especially because Oregon has actually played very well in the fourth quarter defensively, more than any other quarter that they've played this season. So if their defense can figure out by the fourth quarter and they can stay ahead, they'll pull out. I don't think USC has enough in the tank, after what we've seen this season, to pull off another multi-touchdown fourth quarter, especially against an Oregon team, like I said, whose defensive efficiency in the fourth quarter is phenomenal. So it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a really fun game. USC would have absolutely slaughtered Washington. So honestly, everything is meant to happen for a reason, and we got the Pac-12 championship that I think will serve the conference best.
Are you telling me you're voting against Oregon this whole entire season? You've been voting for them, and now when it matters most, you're voting against them, Jonathan?
Alex, I'm somebody who in this life has learned I'd rather be surprised than disappointed. And so far this season, as I said in the first part of our podcast, I have been rooting for my team when I guess the line with my co-host, Ryan Leaf. They have let me down consistently. I will say this, though, Alex, and you'll appreciate this. So when Ryan was the quarterback at Washington State, he was a Heisman Trophy runner-up back in 1997. Every single year, this is the second year that the 2 years that we've been doing this, we always do a gentleman's bet on the Oregon-Washington State game. Loser has to buy the winner a steak. So I didn't win the spread because Oregon was projected to win by like 17 and they won by 15. But we also did a straight up bet, Oregon over Washington Washington State or Washington State over Oregon. And I did win that. So he has promised me a nice 24-ounce porterhouse from Roots Chris when I come back up to LA. So yes, Oregon has disappointed me consistently with the lines, but I will say that when it mattered, when there was a stake on the line, which to me matters more than some fictitious guessing bets, they pulled through for me. So I will hang my hat on that.
I definitely say it's going to be pretty fun, pretty interesting to see. We've got two gunslinger of quarterbacks going to be going and just duking it out on Friday. I definitely say that looking at Oregon's running game, they have that three-headed monster of those running backs that they have. I mean, just having three running backs running for over 300 yards for the whole entire season. I think they could definitely use that to their advantage, especially with how USC has defended the running game. Hasn't been the best, if you ask me. I think their passing defense has been a little better, but when it comes to rushing, they haven't been doing the best there. But I definitely think it's going to be a game that's going to go down to the wire. I could see USC playing a little better in the second half. I mean, the story has always been USC playing a poor first half and really leaving us with, oh my God, what's going on type of first half. Then that second half, it just gets really interesting in that third quarter. Once that ends, you get into a fourth quarter that it's just drop dead close. And then that fourth quarter is exactly what you wait on. And that's exactly what you want in a championship game. And it's going to just be two very talented teams, despite what Oregon's record looks like. I mean, they're above 500, 3-2, but going on with a 2-game losing streak. And unfortunately, with that game against Washington being canceled, it kind of leaves them a little cold with kind of one game or 1 week without play. Then you're kind of like, okay, well, we didn't play any football. We're going against a USC team that, they're 5-0, blazing hot. They had a game that was canceled a couple of weeks ago against Colorado, but you have an Oregon team that momentum's not exactly on their side because of that losing streak, but they are pretty fresh. They're going to have fresh legs. They're going to be going into this championship game well rested, ready for a USC offense that's going to be consisting of a lot of long passes, a lot of the passing game. And when they do go with the running game, Malapaya is going to come in pouncing, and he's going to be punching through that defensive line. And we'll see, man. We'll have to wait and see, because I think at the end of the day, I'm going to say USC comes up top, and it's going to be a super close game. And I think it is going to be another game like USC, UCLA, where it's going to leave all Oregon and USC fans with their eyes glued to the TV. Like, hey, you want to go get yourself a snack, a sandwich, something? You better go during a commercial, during halftime. Nothing. Like, you need a beer? No, you got to do that before the game or during halftime, because there's not a moment that you want to lose, because anything could happen between these two teams. I mean, you see USC, they enforce a lot of turnovers, but Oregon, very good with the ball, and especially with the long ball. So wait and see, Jonathan.
I don't mean to cut you off here. Do you remember? I just want to pick your brain here really quickly. Do you remember the Oregon USC score last year?
I don't remember it, but I know Oregon definitely. They were good with Justin Herbert being there as their quarterback. That guy was absolutely unstoppable, and I know Oregon stomped on USC.
It was 56-24 at the Coliseum. I was at that game. USC has a chip on their shoulder. Now, you're right. The difference was Justin Herbert in that secondary for USC. That secondary is phenomenal. Obviously, the middle linebacker, Troy Dye, is now the defensive captain for the Vikings after being drafted in the 4th round last year. Herbert's going to be offensive rookie of the year. He's going to be in a Pro Bowl. That guy is tearing it up in the NFL for, unfortunately, the most disappointing team because they can't they won't fire their coach. They could put you and me as the co-coordinators and co-offensive head coaches and for Los Angeles Chargers, and we do a better job facilitating than Anthony Lynn. I promise you that. But I think that USC remembers that game. Most of the USC team has returned from last year. And they all remember they were up 14-0 after the first quarter. They go 56 points through 3 quarters against Oregon. That won't happen this year. That will not happen this year, and they won't let that happen. So I think that history is a proven factor for a lot of these teams. Remember, back in 2016, Oregon lost to Washington 71-22. It was the worst game I've ever been to. I was covering that game. I've never seen – you want to talk about grown men crying? I was on the field after the game following the Oregon football team. I promise, true story. I wasn't calling the game. I was covering it for the radio station. I was just a sophomore. Basically the way it worked is up to 5 minutes by fourth quarter, 5 minutes before the game ends, all the media goes down to the sideline, and then you watch the rest of the game from the sideline. Very, very cool. But then you follow the teams to the media facility. You do your post-game interviews, all that stuff. So Oregon was getting blown out. Washington scored another touchdown to just run up the score, to score 71 points. With like a minute left. So we're on the sideline. So the game ends, and everybody is super melancholic, super sluggish, walking through the tunnel. And I was one of the last media members to follow through the tunnel. And I remember stopping, and I saw Troy Dye, one of my favorite defenders, like I said, now Minnesota Vikings defensive captain, playing starting linebacker for them, look up the scoreboard, and he cried, and he said, "I'm never going to effing let this happen again." And he didn't. But that was a very impactful moment because it showed just how important these football games are to these athletes and how much it means to them and how much they take it upon themselves when these games are blowouts, right? And so the reason I allude to this, not just because it's a great story and an inspirational one, but because I'm sure that there was some feelings very similar in that USC locker room against Oregon last year. And I'm sure that a lot of those USC players that felt that, they're going to remember when they see those Oregon Duck uniforms, or whichever ones they decide to wear, the one of a million that they have on Friday, those feelings are going to come back, and they're going to channel those feelings, and they're going to play their hearts out. It's going to be a really fun game to watch.
Absolutely. A lot of the returners for USC, which is basically almost majority of the whole entire team, they do remember that game. It's not something they're going to forget, especially if your head coach, Clay Helton, he is thinking about that game, and he's definitely coaching his heart out for this game. And I think he's going to call a good game against Oregon because he wants his revenge. He wants it more than anybody else on that field, and he wants it in a big stage like this, and he's going to go guns blazing here, Jonathan. But, final thoughts. Any final thoughts for this Friday's game?
Even though I picked Oregon to win, go Ducks. Or excuse me, USC. Even though I picked USC to win, I take that back. Don't edit that. You need to show my flaws, Alex. Don't edit this. This is the raw, uncut version, ladies and gentlemen, of Sideline Sports Podcast. Go Ducks.
There you go, folks. Jonathan Rifkind himself. You guys can record that part because this never happens. Jonathan will never
do that. Don't record it. It's already recorded.
You guys, if you guys want that footage again, please let me know, and I will gladly just send you that little clip of Jonathan saying USC will beat Oregon. Whenever you guys want it, please let me know. I will send that to you your way because that is a rare footage. And you know what? When I run into you, Jonathan, in the future, when you're in the big leagues broadcasting and such, when I run into you, I'm going to say, "Hey, Jonathan, you remember when USC was going to win against Oregon? Do you remember when you said that?"
And then I'm going to say, you know what, though? Remember when I was wrong and Oregon beat USC? And I will happily be wrong. I will happily be wrong with that prediction, Alex.
Hey, man, we'll just let the game on Friday speak for itself.
Fair enough.
You know what? That's all the time we have left here on this installment. Thank you so much for tuning into this one. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please give this episode a thumbs up. Also, hit the subscribe button down below. We really appreciate it. We're going up from here, folks. And you know what? Jonathan Rifkind right here, guys, the host of Bleav in the Pac-12. Also, I'll make sure to put his social media handles down in the description below, along with the Bleav Network down in the description, all of the social media handles so you guys can stay up to date with everything he has going on with the network and with the podcast. And, of course, with what's going on with Jonathan and his life. I mean, just because COVID's going on, it doesn't mean the man himself doesn't have any broadcasting gigs. So here it is. Jonathan Rifkind, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're the man, Alex. Always a pleasure, and looking forward to many more of these to come.
Absolutely. I'm looking to be texting somebody during the game on Friday. So,
I might have to turn my phone off depending on what the score is.
Put it on airplane mode. Oops, put it on airplane mode. But you know what? I'm Alex Naveja, the host of Sideline Sports Podcast, signing off. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Have a good one. And, of course, good luck to both USC and Oregon on Friday.